Let's go check out that new store. This looks like something. This is still the same thing, right? Oh, this is a teleport. You know, maybe I could do this hunt again, because it's on the way back anyways. Not sure if there's a reason to, though, because it was just a goblin fight. What do we got? Some upgrade stuff that's unbelievably expensive. How am I supposed to have any of this amount of money? Are you kidding me? I almost feel like the idea for making money is fight stuff, level it up, and then sell it. Because otherwise, how are you supposed to make money? I don't really want to sell any of this stuff, though, because it might actually come into play. Wow, I mastered this, and it sells for 100 more gil. I could sell these iron bangles, but they're not even that much gil. I just realized how good this mithril bangle is. I didn't even realize. What is... Oh yeah, you could definitely take that. I didn't ask anything. I literally didn't even phrase it as a question. I was going to take Giselle. I should just sell all of these. Actually worth quite a bit. Well, I'm still kind of stuck. I can, however, give you this. I don't know, we don't really get to see much of the city, only the outskirts of it. Something happened. Yeah, I mean, I could accept that fight for the Goblin Maestro, but I'm gonna fight like 3 of them on the way back anyways. I don't think it was worth any more points. I do kind of wonder if you get the reward again, though. Maybe something else. Indeed. Finally, the game can breathe a little bit. definitely enjoying just exploring. I only wish that I could upgrade. But nothing gives any upgrades or money to buy upgrades. I'm hoping once we get to where we're going, there's like some robots. We'll be all set. Ooh. These goblin fights are definitely nice. Big Crystarium points, good drops, quick fights. They make funny noises. Everything you want in a fight. They have goofy arms, headphones. They have a funny name.
Target's a target.
They look like something on a Monster Rancher, actually. Alright, I'll tell you what, since these fights are so nice, let's go back, accept that quest, and see if they respawn. Well, these ones already respawned. The only thing is, I wish I could more easily get a preemptive on them. So that definitely speeds up the fight a lot. I could use the aerosol, but then I'd just be wasting money because those are really expensive. You don't want to use items in your quest to grind. Just end up going backwards. Well, it might be worth it if I could use it to preemptive like multiple fights, but I'm guessing you only get it once. I wonder if that saves time changing,
That's how it's done.
if you change a paradigm during the animation of the enemy getting staggered, I wonder if it saves time over watching them get staggered. It might not actually like be quicker than the stagger animation, but if you were already going to switch, then it probably does save a little bit of time to do it as they're staggering. Yes, let's reattempt. See what we get. I already got a 5-star on this, so I'm not going to improve my rating, but now these guys are back already. Good stuff. Just did a little like heel clip with his wheels. That was cute. Spined horn. Every time. I like how they're afraid of me when they don't have their boss, but when they have their boss, they're not afraid of me. They're powerless without their leader. Even that fight's not bad. It still pretty quick. Alright, Hunt's over here. See what we get. Fun in the massive sun. Oh, perfect. Perfect blitz. Seraphic, they really gifted sub to Sigursil. Appreciate it, man. Sigursil, welcome back for the 11 months. One more month till your full year being here with us. Thank you for hanging out with us for so long, man.
Target's a target.
How's it going, Turbo? Stopped playing this game when it came out because it was too hard and didn't want to look at a guide. I honestly think this is the hardest game we've played for Fantathon. And that's like really strange to say, but at least in terms of like just kind of brain dead playing through it, like you're kind of not allowed to brain dead play through it. If you try to brain dead play through it, you will die a horrible death. Whereas I can pretty much say with every other game, minus maybe Final Fantasy I, you really weren't punished that much to just kind of fling yourself in the dungeons. And if you were, like, if you were punished, you could also just sit there and grind and you'd be fine. Whereas here, I don't really feel that way. You can grind as much as you want, you're still going to get owned if you don't know how the combat works. At least in the regular story missions, like up to this point. At this point, I think you could just grind to the point where you're super strong, but before this, there was always a limit to how far you could grind. And like that, I mean, I read a lot of comments of people saying that they quit the game when they got to the big face Falsi, because you couldn't grind any further, and he was pretty tough even when you were fully grinded out, you know? So I actually got one less star that time. Okay, I got 3 bombshells. Wait a second, those are upgrade materials, aren't they? Oh, we're gaming. So I wonder if all the hunts give you that, or if this one's just special. This is a really nice spot to grind. I get a bunch of Crystarium points on the way to this hunt, and I get upgrade materials for doing the hunt, and I can just walk back and everything's gonna respawn. But yeah, like, just, I don't know if it's the hardest game overall, but it does feel like if you're just kind of playing the game for the story, you get punished playing this, whereas I can't really say that about many of the other games. I would say that 3 was the hardest to beat, but that's just because the final dungeon is insane. But to get to the final dungeon, I don't remember 3 being that bad. It was hard, but it wasn't, like, insane. It was really just that final dungeon that was like, oh, you want to beat the game? That sucks. Prepare to die.
Just another battle.
Which, personally, I really like. I really like when the final dungeon is actually really difficult. I think it's cool to feel like you actually have to master the game and be rewarded with the final cutscene. I've always thought that that was... if I were to design a game, I would make the final dungeon almost on the level of like a super boss, to where like you really have to master the game to beat it. And I know a lot of people probably disagree with that in terms of game design, but I think that the final boss of a game should be a true test of everything you've learned. And, you know, it rewards you with the finale of the story. Now, it shouldn't be like impossible for someone that isn't a gamer to complete, but I honestly think that final bosses are too easy in most games. I think that if you're not a gamer, you should still be able to beat the final boss. It shouldn't be like a gateway where you have to be a certain skill at video games in order to complete it. But at the same time, I think that most final bosses are too easy, and it doesn't really feel rewarding to finish the game because you just press the button and beat the final boss. Like I said, it's more of a personal preference. I don't say that games are like necessarily bad if they have a weak final boss. I don't dock them points for having a weak final boss, but me personally, I like when final bosses are tough. Yeah, I mean, I get that argument, like, make the final boss easy so that all the casual players can see the story, and then have like a super boss for those that want it. But for me, and I talked about this with Final Fantasy XIII, no spoilers, but I feel like the challenge of a video game is part of what makes the video game. I think that if you have a game where you're fighting a literal god, it should feel like you're fighting a literal god. It should be difficult. It should be challenging. Otherwise, it, you know, doesn't feel like you're accomplishing it. Like, what's the point of it being a video game? It might as well be a movie, right? For me, that's part of what makes video games special, is that they're a challenge. The thing with movies is that you just watch it and there's no challenge. With video games, that's why it's a different medium, because it can challenge you. You have to do things. You have to press buttons. You have to get good at it. You have to, you know, learn things about the game in order to master it. If everything is just free, why even be a video game? For the most part. I'm not saying every video game that isn't challenging isn't a video game. I mean, there's still, like, walking simulators and stuff where they use different aspects of video game technology to make you experience the story. But I'm just saying, in general, use the fact that video games have this very unique ability to be challenging in your favor. Don't just ignore it and be like, let's make it everything a movie, you know? There can be good games that are also movies, but in general, I think that too many video games don't take advantage of the fact that video games can be challenging and that can add to the story. When you fight a giant evil dragon of death, it should probably kill you the first time you fight it, because then it makes it actually seem like it's a big giant death dragon and not just another enemy that you press X on. You know what I mean? It's way more immersive when the big giant enemy is actually scary and challenging. Like I said, this doesn't apply to every video game ever, you know? And it doesn't mean that if bosses are not super challenging, they suck. But just as a general rule, I appreciate it when games actually make the big scary monster challenging, because it makes it feel like it's worthy of being a video game and not a movie, you know? See, I disagree. Games should be hard. Games should be a challenge. Like I said, they shouldn't all be Dark Souls, but I hate this thought that, like, every game has to be... If you're on the same level as the enemy, it should be free. Like, you should not lose. Like, game overing is a bad thing in video games. That is what video games have become. Like, video games are designed now to where they're hoping that you never see the game over screen. That's... And I think that's just, it really misses the point of video games. Especially, and I mean, part of this is me being a boomer and growing up with the NES where the game over screen was literally part of the game. But, you know, that's what made video games special, was you start the game as Mario with 3 lives and you die 3 times on the first level and you're like, wow, this is so hard. And then you have to learn from your mistakes and continue getting better, and you know, that's like so much of the experience to me. And like I said, because I know a lot of people are going to argue this point, not every game needs to be that way. You can have a game that has 0 challenge, and it can be fun, and it can be a good game. I'm not saying every game needs to be that way. But, you know, Final Fantasy XIII, the 17th entry in a series that has historically been a game that is either difficult or challenging, or at least you have to use your brain to complete the tasks. Final Fantasy XVII shouldn't be a walking simulator. There should be some challenge. There should be some bite. There should be some enemies that kick your butt. Like, I think that's fair to say. Yes, Life is Strange 3 shouldn't be so hard that people can't beat it. But Final Fantasy XVII, yeah, it should kick your butt from time to time, you know? The new Mario game should kick your butt from time to time. There should be some difficult challenge in it. It's a spiritual successor to an original NES game that most kids didn't even beat, you know? So it should have some challenge in it. Freaking Cooking Mama shouldn't be a game that's challenging people, right? It should be a game that's fun and approachable, but Final Fantasy XVII should have some challenge to it, I think. And when I play a game like Final Fantasy, or a game like God of War, or a game like Devil May Cry, and I get to the final boss and it's like super easy, I feel kind of sad. I'm like, man, I wish that would have been harder. We built up this challenging narrative of like Kratos defeating gods and becoming a god and being awesome and stuff, and then the final boss was just like whack, 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 finish, you know? And that shouldn't be the case. It's God of War. Like, you're playing it you're playing a manly man from Mantown, Mansylvania. It should be some challenge, yeah. Even just to fit the theme of the game, to fit the theme of the narrative, it should be challenging, you know? Which God of War was, thankfully. But, you know what I mean? Like, it should fit the narrative. Final Fantasy is this big adventure with... And there's always a sense of, like, the evil being super evil and destroying the entire planet. And you're this legendary warrior that's defeating the ancient evil. Don't you think there should be some challenge? Like, doesn't that make sense? Doesn't it make you sad when you've built up this narrative of a legendary warrior taking down a legendary evil, and then it's just press X to win? Like, I can't be the only one that feels kind of let down when they get to the final boss and it's easy. And when the narrative is speaking, you know, these big overarching themes of light and darkness and, you know. Like, I think one great example is Kingdom Hearts 1, where, like, throughout the game, you're fighting goofy Disney bosses, and it's like, they don't need to be super difficult. They don't need to kick your butt, and sometimes, honestly, they do. But, you know, most people can get through the game mashing X, and they're fine. And you can beat the goofy Disney bosses and have a blast. But then when it gets to the end, and it's like, yo, this guy's trying to take over the universe. He is darkness incarnate, and you are this legendary hero to defeat darkness incarnate. Like, yeah, it's hard. And it's like a 16-phase fight, and it's super epic. And, like, that would have been so lame if it was just one fight and you just mashed X and then that was the end. Even if the final cutscene was super epic, the fact that the fight itself was difficult and epic adds to the story. To me, that it literally adds to the lore of the game. That we had to go through that huge, ridiculous 2-hour fight to finish the final boss. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's important to the actual story of the game. When you think about Kingdom Hearts 1 as a story, you actually think about that final boss and how crazy it was and how many phases it had and stuff. You don't just think about the final cutscene. You think about the actual boss itself. I think that the actual... You can't always just separate, like, the game mechanics and the story. I think that they go together. And that's where Final Fantasy III really shines, because that final boss, I remember more about the fight itself than actually what happened after you beat the fight. I don't even remember the final cutscene of 3. I remember dying to the final boss 100 times. I don't even remember what happened when I beat him. You know, that's the memorable part, is like, that was the most evil thing ever, because it was so difficult to beat. So yeah, again, I don't think every game should be get good or you can't finish it, but at the same time, it's nice when there's some challenge, because I think it truly adds to the lore of the game and makes it way more interesting. Even to casual players. Alright, bombshells are pretty good. They're not amazing, but they're at least pretty good. So now, what do I want to level up? What's your health thing? Maybe I'll just wait. Maybe I'll just get some items, but then wait to upgrade until I figure out exactly what I need. But yeah, I'm doing this hunt again. I wonder if I get something different if I get a 5-star. I don't really know how to get a 5-star other than just beat it fast. Zeno, thank you for the 10 months. Almost a year, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I really appreciate... That's another thing with difficulty, too. I appreciate how difficult this game is, because it's so unique, and, like, the combat is so unique and different, that if it didn't force me to learn it, it would be the most boring thing ever. Like, imagine if this game was super easy, and all you had to do is just sit here and hit auto battle to win. All of the work they put into making this super unique and cool battle system would go to waste, because you'd just be attacking everything and not doing any thought, you know, putting any thought into it. So I really appreciate the fact that this whole game in general has been difficult, not just the end, but all the way through it's been difficult. Oh, the one we just did? I really liked that one a lot. The fight was fun, and the cutscenes were cool. And I think I remember the ending of that cutscene, what it actually means, but I'm not going to say it yet. But I think I actually do remember what that big blue thing is. But yeah, that was probably the coolest hunt so far. It's funny how, with the new, the newer Final Fantasy games, or just newer games in general,
Be ready for the next fight.
they put so much emphasis on, like, let's make sure there's an easy mode that everyone can play basically with their eyes closed. But only, you know, 10 years ago, crazy to think that's how old this game is, 13 years old. But 13 years ago, 2 consoles ago, this game came out and they're like, we don't need a difficulty option. At all. Like, literally nothing. You win or you lose. Legit nothing to help you. At least I think there is no difficulty option in this game, right? Am I remembering wrong? I think there was no difficulty option. Maybe there was. Now that I'm thinking about it. Okay, never mind then. Sans that argument. Well, it wasn't really an argument, but sans that point. Of course, you can make the same point about 10. 10 had no difficulty option, but 10 wasn't necessarily much of a hard game either. I think 10 is pretty well balanced in terms of difficulty, but maybe one of the easier Final Fantasies. With the exception of a couple bosses that made people quit, like Seymour.
Yes!
That's gotta be 5-star, right? Yeah. Nope, still 3 bombshells. I'll take it though. If we weren't playing a Let's Play, I might actually sit here for like a while and just get bombshells, but for now I'll keep going. But now at least I have an idea, like if I get stuck I can come back here and this will be a nice grind spot. How's it going, Siki? Wait, you're talking about this game? The PC version has a difficulty option, but not this one? So I was right then. Okay, well then, back to my point. It's interesting to think that games like this, at one point, they were like, yeah, this doesn't need a difficulty option. People can deal with it. Like, the mindset has changed so much, because this game is definitely difficult. And especially for people that don't know RPGs, this would be very difficult. And for them to be like, yeah, we don't need a difficulty option for this. We want people to struggle. And then nowadays, like, especially Square Enix is so struggle aversion. They do not want anyone to struggle playing their games. At all. And they've done a pretty good job making sure that people that want a challenge can find it. But in terms of a casual playthrough, they don't want anyone to struggle at all. They are so afraid of people calling their game difficult. They're like, please, for the love of God, put in as many options as possible and as many things as possible to say, please, don't struggle. Why am I casting rays? I think I misclicked. Like, you lose one fight and they're like, are you sure you don't want to play on easy? Please play on easy. Don't game over again and then tell people online that the game's hard. Like, like it's sad that they're so worried about it. Please, for the love of God, do not tell IGN about this. Big for Lil, thank you for the 9 months. Thank you so much. Speaking of IGN, I saw an IGN video the other day, yesterday. I might honestly watch it with you guys while we eat lunch. It is
Time for another approach.
low-key the best IGN video I've ever watched. I was blown away. I was like, this guy gets it. Yeah, it was about broccoli. We should watch it while I eat lunch. Because seriously, it's like, I couldn't believe it. It was about how all of the developers are complaining about Baldur's Gate 3 because it's good. Yeah. Instead of being like, wow, we should make games that are good, they're just like, oh, please don't expect us to make games that are good. And it's like one of the saddest things you'll ever see. Oh no, I gotta get through this again. It's truly sad, and you have so many people defending them as well, saying just the same old argument forever. Just, it never ends, no matter what happens, no matter what bad games are released, no matter what excuses people make, no matter what evidence that people bring forward, there's always the people that are just like, well, video game design is hard, so... As if that just literally trumps every argument ever. Don't look at the fact that the company has more employees. Don't look at the fact that they're literally doing everything we want them to do, but in a microtransaction sense and not in the main game. Don't look at the fact that they're abusing their employees or all these other things. Like, no, video game design is hard, therefore shut up. You are not a video game designer, therefore all of your opinions are invalid. And they're just never ending. Just this never-ending argument of, well, you're not a video game designer, so you have zero say in the matter. Even though you've been in the industry your entire life, even though there's plenty of people that aren't video game designers that still talk about video game design. Oh, you have not developed a AAA video game, so you have no opinion on the matter, and nothing you say matters. Until you own Bethesda and make a game, you're not allowed to say anything about it. I just hate this argument, and it's my entire time on the internet. There's always these people that say this. Whenever I complain about anything in any game, you know, objectively, this game has pretty bad pacing at the start. Well, you're not Square Enix, so your opinion doesn't matter. Maybe they needed lunch that day. I don't know. People eat. Like, it's never ending. It's so obnoxious. No matter how much you compare it to other games from studios of the equal amount of money and equal amount of people, like, you bring all this great evidence to the floor, and it doesn't matter because you're not a game designer. I hate it. They must do the same with every other industry too, like food critics. Well, you're not a chef, so. Movie critics. Well, you don't make movies, so. It's not an argument. It's not. If you bring the evidence to the table, you don't have to literally be creating that product to criticize it. But yeah, I do think it's way more frequent in video games. It really is. I think it's a bunch of people that tried to go to college for video game design and then realized it's hard, and now they just spew that everywhere. Like, oh man, I have to like learn things. I have to like program. That's hard. I just want to sit on my computer and leave comments on things. I just want to yell on Twitter about how people aren't grateful for video games. It's actually X. And it's sad because the argument of video game design is hard is a valid argument. But whenever it's brought up, it's never brought up in a valid way, so people don't even see it as a valid argument anymore. Because they don't bring it up in a valid way. You can't even bring up an argument that's like, listen, this studio had $1 million budget and made this game, and this studio had a $2 million budget and made this game that's half the size. And then, you know, we can't like look at that as we just look at that as, well, video game design's hard. So now that whole argument means nothing to me now, whereas really it should, because video game is hard. Video games are hard to make, and video games are getting harder to make as time progresses. It's becoming harder and harder to make games on a scope that works, you know? One of the hardest things with video game design right now is making games too big. Elden Ring, so many people complained that the game was too big. But at the same time, people were like, if they had made it smaller, people would have complained that it wasn't fully utilizing the PS5 and it wasn't worth $70 and it wasn't worth buying a PS5 for. But then they make it big enough to satisfy those people, and then you have people saying, oh, it's too big. I can't do everything in it, therefore bad. So like that kind of thing, I feel really bad for developers, and it's getting harder and harder to find a balance between games being $70 and being worth $70. But like I said, it's so hard to even make that argument because the whole video games are hard to make argument is just completely nullified in my brain because so many people have actual brain dead takes with that argument that now I can't even bring it up because I feel like an idiot. Except for so many people make that argument in the worst ways. They're just trying to completely ignore all the proof in front of them and just say, well, I can't program, so... So yeah, it's just a shame. I should have a ton of Crystarian points. Oh, yeah. We're cooking. We are cooking. Alright. There's a scene right here, so let's do this, and then let's break for lunch, maybe. We're gonna watch that video. I genuinely want to watch the video with you guys. Honestly, I kind of want Kira. And I don't think, unless there's like a, this is like an accessory slot or something. There it is. I knew she'd have one close. Alright, let's go for that. Get some really good stat boosts on the way. I'm going for it. Oh my god. Oh my god, this is so painful. I'm genuinely sorry that I have committed myself to getting these spells. Yeah, we're gonna get Kiraja. Okay, let's take a lunch break. We will be back after lunch, and yeah, we're gonna do a double day of Final Fantasy XIII. So thank you, YouTube, for sticking around. We'll see you in the next episodes.